Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Leo and today I'm going to show you how to sew the Kaja wrap pants. They have a tailored look but still feel soft and flowy. There is no zipper, which is very nice. Instead, the top edge is finished with bias binding, which gives it a clean look. The fit is adjustable through the wrap construction, so you can tie or fasten them to fit your body. In this version I'm using a leather buckle closure, but I'll also show you other options later, like ties or a fireman clasp. You can make this a single wrap version, like I'm doing here, or a double wrap version, where both front panels overlap. Before we start, make sure to read through the manual. It includes fabric recommendations and all the general information you need. Let's start with cutting the pieces. For the front, there are two different pieces, one with the fold detail and one without. So you need to cut each of them once, but they still need to be mirrored. So make sure you don't accidentally cut both pieces in the same direction. We need the back piece 2 times mirrored. Transfer all notches carefully to the wrong side. You can use small snips or a fabric marker. If your fabric looks similar on both sides, mark the wrong side after cutting. This helps a lot later. Before we start sewing, we stabilize the top edges. Apply interfacing tape along the top edges of all pieces on the wrong side of the fabric. This helps to prevent the fabric from stretching out over time and keeps the waistband area in shape. Make sure you press carefully and use baking paper if needed to protect your iron. Finish all edges except the top edges to prevent them from fraying. And if you don't have an overlock machine, you can simply use a zigzag stitch. For the pockets, you can adjust the size, shape or placement if you like. This is just my suggested version, but that's the nice thing about sewing your own garments. You can just get creative and make it yours. Fold all side edges in by 1 centimeter and press, and then fold the top edge down by 2 centimeters. Then we top stitch along the top edge about 1.5 centimeters from the edge. This way we secure the seam allowance. Now we place the pocket onto the right side of the back piece. Align the top corners of the pocket with the pocket placement markings. Lay everything flat on the table and use plenty of pins so the pocket sits smoothly without any wrinkles. And then we top stitch the pocket in place, sewing very close to the edge all the way around. Backstitch at the beginning and end. And at the bottom corners, leave the needle in the fabric, lift the presser foot, turn the fabric, lower the foot and continue sewing. Repeat this for both sides, and then we close the back crotch seam. So place both back pieces right sides together and pin in place. Then we sew the seam with a 1 centimeter seam allowance and press the seam allowance open afterwards. Now we're creating the front pleat. I first demonstrated this on a small sample piece to make it easier to understand. There are 4 important markings: the center fold line, the matching point at the hem, and the 2 outer pleat markings that need to meet. To fold the pleat, bring the 2 outer markings together with the fabric folded wrong sides together on the inside. Now repeat this on the actual front piece and make sure you're folding the fabric inward, not outward. Press everything really well so the pleat stays sharp and clean. Now we can place both front pieces right sides together and sew the center front crotch seam with a 1 cm seam allowance, and afterwards press the seam allowance open. For this version I'm using a buckle ladder with a width of about 2.5 centimeters, and therefore I cut a strip measuring 65 by 7 centimeter. Because my buckle has an inner width of 2.5 centimeter, I double that, so it's 5 centimeter, and add 2 centimeters seam allowance each. But if you have a different width, you can just make it larger or smaller. And then we fold the strip right sides together and pin it in place. Then we sew along the long edge with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Afterwards, trim the seam allowance slightly to reduce bulk, and then we turn the tube right side out using a loop turner or a safety pin. I personally prefer using a safety pin. Here I'm showing you a loop turner, but to be honest, I prefer the safety pin. Press the strap flat, and then we fold the raw edges inward at both short ends. This can take a little while and is a bit tricky, but you can do it. And then we top stitch all around the strap close to the edge. Measure 13 centimeters on one side and cut it. Now thread the short piece with the finished edge through the leather buckle and fold it over at the center bar and sew it in place to secure it. Now we place it on the right side of the front piece without the pleat, with a 7 centimeter distance from the top and the good side of the buckle piece facing you. Now place the front and back pieces right sides together, align the side seams carefully and pin in place. Then we sew both side seams closed with a 1 centimeter seam allowance and press the seam allowance open. Now place the front and back pieces right sides together again and align the inseam carefully and especially match the crotch points exactly. Pin everything in place and sew the inseam continuously from one hem to the other with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. After sewing, press the seam allowance open. Later the pants will close on the inside with hooks and eyes at the closure markings. But before closing the fold, we need to make sure that we have enough space to get inside. So from the fold line, I measure about 13 centimeters to the left and create a new marking. You can pin this area closed at that point and carefully try the pants on to see if you can get inside. Depending on your hip measurement, you may want to leave the opening slightly longer, so adjust the marking if needed. Now we attach the bias binding to the top edge. Place the bias tape right sides together along the top edge of the pants. The raw edge of the bias tape should align with the top edge of the pants. At both ends, let the bias tape extend about 2 centimeters past the new markings. Pin everything in place carefully and try not to stretch the bias tape while sewing, and use plenty of pins or clips so everything stays smooth and flat. Now sew all around the top edge with a 1 centimeter seam allowance, and after sewing, press the bias tape upward. Now fold the pleat section right sides together and sew from the top edge down to the new opening marking. Make sure to sew a few millimeters below the previous seam line, so the seams overlap slightly. Trim the corner slightly if needed, turn everything right side out and carefully shape the corner using a point turner or a similar tool, and then press everything well. Fold the bias binding inward over the seam allowance and press, and then fold everything again and press again. Make sure the bias tape rolls slightly towards the inside so it won't be visible from the outside later. Use plenty of pins or clips to hold everything in place evenly. Now we can top stitch from the right side of the fabric, starting at the new opening marking. So close to the edge of the waistband, about 1 centimeter from the top edge, making sure the bias binding gets secured on the inside as well. Take your time and sew slowly for a clean finish. Now we can attach the second strap. Fold the unfinished short edge inward once and secure it with a small stitch, and then we can place the strap onto the inside of the pleat section aligned with the top edge. Pin it in place carefully. Now continue sewing the top edge, starting where you stopped before, and sew continuously towards the corner of the pleat, and then continue a little further down to secure the strap. Try the pants on again and check the length. If you want to shorten them, mark the new hem length first. Make sure to still add 2 cm seam allowance below your final length. Trim away the excess fabric if needed and make sure that the side seams don't open up. And then fold the hem inward by 2 cm and press. You can either leave it as a single fold like I'm doing here or fold it twice for a cleaner finish. And then top stitch the hem from the right side about 1.5 cm from the edge and repeat that for both legs. We finally get to the end and only need to attach the hook and eye on the inside. They are placed at the original closing markings, but this is also the moment where you can customize the fit slightly. So try the pants on again and close them at this marking and see if they fit you well. Check if the waistband feels comfortable, and if needed you can move the closure point slightly inward or outward. Just make sure both points stay symmetrical to the fold line. And once you're happy with the fit, mark the final placement clearly with some pins and sew the hooks and eyes by hand onto the bias binding on the inside. Make sure the center of the hook and eye sits on the marking, not the outer edges. Otherwise the pants may close unevenly. Use plenty of stitches so everything feels secure and durable. Alternatively, you can also use a small button and buttonhole closure instead. And that's it! Your Kaja pants are ready and finished. I wanted to show you a few alternative versions you can create with the same pattern. Here I show you the double wrap version. I cut 2 mirrored wrap front pieces instead of using the asymmetric front combination. And I also used a button and buttonhole closure instead of hook and eyes. And on one side I added a large vertical buttonhole underneath the pleat. The opening should be wide enough for the strap to pass through easily. And I also left a small opening at the side seam so the long strap can be threaded through to the back. This way you can wrap the strap around the back piece and tie together with the front strap on the side. For this version my long strap was around 120 cm and the shorter one around 60. Here I use fireman clasps instead of straps. This creates a cleaner and more structured look. To attach them, carefully make small openings in the fabric and secure the hardware with the metal pieces provided. I recommend adding some interfacing on the inside first, especially for softer fabrics, so the fabric stays stable and doesn't tear. For the denim version I kept it very simple and only used thin fabric straps. This is probably the easiest variation and works really well for a more casual look. There are of course many more possibilities. You could also use large visible buttons, D-rings, buckles or other types of hardware. Different fabrics will completely change the look of the pants as well. Feel free to experiment and make the Kaja pants your own. Thank you so much for sewing along with me. I hope you liked the pattern, and as always feel free to message me on Etsy if you have any questions, and if you like this video and my patterns, a review and comments and likes mean so much to me, and especially if you post something I would love to see or make, so feel free to tag me. I'm always happy about any feedback. Yeah, I wish you a wonderful day and see you soon.